I've done a couple of boo-boos where...
I did nearly ask you about it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where he's going.
I don't know.
Said,
And then there was
this
eels.
is the best podcast
And then your
to be.
dreams.
I know, and then my head is like imploding. Right, we're fucking... So, welcome to Roma, Auto Trader. God, I can't remember how to speak today. So, welcome to Roma, Auto Trader UK's product and tech podcast. So, it feels like it's been a while since I've sat in this hot seat. So, I've got some absolutely awesome guests today to chat to because it has been a while, and they're gonna take me on a little journey through the land of Auto Trader, especially networks, but through the lens of a disability and neurodiversity network. I definitely need a new set of teeth. So, big hello to my esteemed colleagues, Nardia,
Hey.
Nos,
Hello.
and Niki.
Hello.
So, until this morning, I didn't realise we had 3 N's. But obviously,
Oh, yeah.
Nos,
I
you're...
just realised that. Yeah.
Obviously, Nos is short for...
She-nos.
So,
Need to get that.
Yes. Yeah, let's lean right into that mic. So, brilliant. So really kick off on this one. It'd be great because obviously a lot of people from Auto Trade tune in, but we also have people not, is a little bit about yourselves, a little bit about the network and why the network's probably important to you, because you obviously got different roles in it. So I don't know who wants to start. I'm looking at
Who wants to
Niki.
kick off?
I'm looking
Yeah,
at
go on,
Niki.
Niki. Yeah, go.
Okay. You want me to start?
Yes, please.
So, a little bit about ourselves.
So a little bit about yourselves, your role at Auto Trader and with the network, and probably what the network means itself, but we can go like little eels jumping over each other as we go.
Eels. Okay.
That's what it looks like in my head.
Okay, fine. I don't think we need to know what it looks like in your head. do we? Okay, so I'm Niki Kilby. I'm the go-to-market director. So I run one of the communities in Auto Trader. We sort of sit right at the middle of the organisation, looking after all the marketing, consumer, customer, as well as delivery, PR, events, all of those kind of activities that sit right at the core and interact and collaborate with all of the different communities across the business. I've been with Auto Trader forever, and probably about the last 4 or 5 years, I think, have been involved with the Disability and Neurodiversity network, and the last sort of 3 years have been the ALT sponsor, and the ALT is our leadership team. So each of our networks has a sponsor that sits in the leadership team for Auto Trader, which makes sure that the big important topics are getting representation at those conversations about what we're doing as a business and what we're prioritising. So hopefully do a good job of representing and making sure those topics are aired where they need to be. Is that enough eel?
Yeah.
Work?
Well, no one's gone like, well. So this is where hopefully we start. So what about yourself, Nos? What's your role in network, and what do you do on a day-to-day?
So I'm a front-end developer in product and tech, actually in content and marketing now. Used to be on Deal Builder. And I'm a facilitator for the DNN network. I actually got involved. I've been at Auto Trader for about 3.5 years now. Joined as a grad, and when you join, you kind of have like a presentation from all of our networks. And I'd recently kind of spoken to a GP about the fact that my long-term mental illness could be classed as a disability. And so when I had a chat from the DNN network, had never been in a place that had employee networks at all, and I felt like I aligned the most with DNN and joined as facilitator. I need some new teeth too.
It's hard, isn't it?
Joined as a facilitator about a year in. So I just kind of try and do as many projects as I can.
Cool. And last but not least.
Cool. So I'm Nardia. I work in Deal Builder support. I've been with Auto Trader now for 6 years. I came in and worked in tech support, and then I worked my way up to be a manager in Deal Builder support, where we support our customers through digital retailing through the consumer and the retailer side. And I'm in customer ops, and I've been part of the network for 6 years. I joined because I have dyslexia, proud of having dyslexia. maybe could have ADHD. Don't actually know. The signs are there. But yeah, so I joined because it was always a bit of a taboo with letting people know that I had dyslexia, especially in a work environment. So when I came to Art Trader, I did the inclusion training session, and they were talking about different networks, and DNN, like Nos, fitted me and suited me well because I have dyslexia and I can really relate to people, and just wanted to be an advocate for people who have dyslexia or who might be neurodiverse or have a disability. So it was a really important subject to me. And yeah.
And so what's your role?
So I'm a lead. Sorry, I'm a network lead.
So you're on the network
I need
lead.
to stay humble. So yeah. No, I'm a network lead. So yeah, I'm just coming to 2 years now. I've been a network lead. So in Art Trader, we have network leads, and we do it for 2 years. So I'm stepping down now and giving the opportunity to someone else to be a network lead. But I've been part of the network for 6 years, but a lead for 2, and it's evolved a lot in the last
So how
couple
long
of
has
years.
the because obviously you Niki, I think you mentioned 5 or 6 years. 6 years. So how long has the network been going? Is it one of the long established ones?
The network's been going since 2018, so 7 years.
It's one of the longer established ones, but not the longest.
Yeah.
And is there stuff like, so if you're going about like what like right now are the key, or what have been the key objectives of the network? Like one thing we've been talking when we've done one on social mobility is like right now it's all about like inform, because a lot of people don't know what social mobility is. So if you're going to paraphrase what the network's about, have you got any like whatever you call it, and like elevator pitch?
I think because we're also very connected to the accessibility working group as well. So I think between the accessibility working group and the Disability and Neurodiversity network, for us it's all about how do we make Auto Trader an easier place to navigate for people with different accessibility needs, whether that's through disability, whether that's through neurodiversity. And I think the last couple of years we've certainly been on a bit of a journey of being clear about what that means in an Auto Trader context. And for example, this is probably one that we use quite a lot, for people with certain neurodiversities, some environments are not brilliant places to work, and that sometimes we can do something about that, and there's adjustments that we can make, and there's things that make life better for everybody and also make it easier to navigate for a neurodiverse person. But some things, like Auto Trader, is an incredibly people-focused, collaborative environment where it's really, really important to us that people spend time with their teams together, working really closely. If that's not an environment where you're going to thrive, there's not really adjustments that we can make on that. Like we can't say, well, actually, for this one individual, we're not collaborative and we don't need to work together and we don't need to be in the office and in the same place at the same time. So it's trying to navigate the things that we can do that make Auto Trader a great place to be, whatever your accessibility need is. Is that kind of a good explanation of what we've been trying to do?
Yeah, that's a great explanation.
And one of the things, I think, just thinking about the notes of when we were chatting beforehand, but one of the things that came up was actually the name of the network and whether there's any stigma associated with the name. I think it was the one Art Trader, the sort of when you join, was it one of the participants asked the question on that?
New starter that.
Yeah. So what was that? Because it's a really interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we've looked at the name in the past and we've had a discussion around it. We would have loved accessibility, but that's already been taken. So I think it's a good time right now for us to look at that name again. But there is it can be seen as a negative.
Some people don't like to be associated with the name neurodiversity or disabled. They could have been diagnosed with something, but they don't identify with those words, and they see it as kind of like a real negative, and they don't want to be part of the network because they don't like that we're called that. On the flip side, I think a lot of people really do identify with having a community. I think a lot of disabilities and neurodiversities can often feel quite isolating. So having a group of people that you can feel like you're part of a community with, that's definitely how I feel. So I really resonate with them. But yeah, it's a polarizing.
I mean, it is it's an interest. As a network, do you talk about those topics like that, like people don't want to join because of this reason. Like, what do people think? Or another one might be, I think we talked about the Purple Heart. Like, people really don't like this symbol. Like, how do people in the network feel about that? If there's people outside the network that don't want to join because of that reason, because it must be quite polarizing in certain respects.
Yeah, I think because the language changes a lot and people are sometimes scared of saying the wrong thing.
Absolutely,
But then
yeah.
they're so scared of saying the wrong thing that they don't want to have the chat or the conversation or find out a bit more, which we don't really want to do. But for me, like the words, like we should try and reclaim the words back. Like, not is it being a positive thing, but I think there's loads of things around stereotypes and misconception, or people not being educated, or barriers within business, or I don't know, mental health and things like that. So
yeah, I think we're still quite new as a society learning about disabilities and neurodiversities. Like, I don't know, I can't even imagine talking about this like on a podcast 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think people are really scared about like saying the wrong thing and offending people. I think when I've had kind of people disagreeing with the name, we haven't really come up with anything better, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's been a really difficult like journey to try and find something else. We're still thinking about it, and it is like a conversation that's come up a couple of times over the last like few years. But yeah, I think having the open conversation, because we've got like a Slack channel like as a community, and I think we've had some like conversations where people disagree in there, sometimes about language, sometimes about other things, and I think it's a healthy conversation to have, because it's having it out in the open so people can think, oh, actually that's a different opinion I've never thought of before.
Yeah,
it's definitely a debate that we're having. Like, it's not something that we'd shy away from and go, no, that's the name of the network, end of conversation.
Yeah.
Like, we would never do that. It's okay, well, let's have a chat about what it could be and how people feel about it. And I think we'd really we need to have the debate, and we need to get somewhere, because if there are people that feel that here's a network that I really want to be part of, that I feel could really help my world, particularly as trader, but there's something that's stopping me from doing that, or I'm not comfortable with the way that it's been presented, we should have that conversation.
Yeah.
And like you say, Nos, it's a little bit of a, well, let's figure out what it should be called then, if it's not that people will never reach a perfect solution. There's always going to be somebody that isn't keen on where we land.
Yeah.
So it's, how do you get the majority?
Yeah, it's a bit like the conversation we're having, like, oh, I love the Purple Heart, or I don't like the Purple Heart. And it's a bit like, when
I
you
didn't know there was a thing about the Purple Heart. You see, there's just so many topics and so many things going on, and new information so frequently. I didn't know the Purple Heart was something that people found contentious.
Yeah,
It's
I didn't know till
fascinating.
recently, when everyone was like, oh, I don't think you should be using the Purple Heart. And I was like, well, I use that with my mates with the emoji. Like, purple's my thing. Like, I look great in purple as well. So
What is what's the issue with the Purple Heart?
I think it's
completely
like
missed that one.
Purple Tuesday. I think a lot of DNN like businesses are maybe a bit behind with how they're thinking. They use purple, don't they? Like, we went to a conference, didn't we? And it's all I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's like people don't like chocolate, certain chocolate, or they don't like pasta.
so
It's like,
more like a
how
preference.
could I think it's a preference, yeah. And
Right.
I think it's just people are not. Yeah, I
Right.
don't.
I guess it's a little bit back to the labelling and, you know, the othering and stigmatizing. I guess there's a bit of that, of like, whenever you put a label or attach a colour or I can kind of understand why it might be difficult.
I think it's about being like put in a box, isn't it? And like you say,
And being neurodiverse and disabled, it's such a personal thing. It's never going to look the same in two people, and so it's a really difficult one to. And also, like, conversations have come on so far since the network was named 7 years ago. So I think it's a really good time to have a think about what we should be called and how we should look moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, the one that, like, you know, so when we do these things, I try and prep in advance, thinking, like, you know, don't get your words wrong. Like, don't get people's names wrong. I hate that. But don't get words wrong. And then, you know, like the bit of self-education. Because the one that threw me a little bit, and then another one that threw me was, like, I've used it when, you know, you talk about people's superpowers. And it was when you said, "Oh, I detest that," and I'm like, honestly, I like cringed inside, going, "Oh my God, I've used that so many times." So that was another one, like going back to stereotypes, like what people think of it. Because I was Googling, there's loads of articles about neurodiversity, the superpower, like there's loads on the internet, and going, like, I could read that, like, and just be go, "Oh, great," and then rock up and be talking about it, and then turn off half the room instantly. So again, is that something that, going back to debates and talking around it, that people chat around, or is that personal preference? I'm fascinated how you've got such a
such a strong opinion on it.
Well, it came loud and clear. I'm like, whoa. Because I was thinking, about type. Should we talk about? I'm glad I didn't put that name in.
I personally don't mind it, but I can see it being like, like the X-Men, like the mutants and stuff. It's kind of like that, isn't it? Like, yeah, I am different, but like that's my strength, and I do have challenges like everyone else. But I can see the superhero thing, like superpowers. It's kind of that's how I feel like people might not like it, but I don't mind it. But obviously, language.
I feel like I might monologue here.
Go for it now.
We've got time. We've got time.
I just think it's quite infantilizing, and that, I don't know, in society these days, I feel like we've got a bit of like a hustle culture going on. Like you've got to have like a side hustle, and everything's got to be really positive and productive, and I don't know, like efficient. And like I was recently diagnosed with ADHD. I'm not even a year into it, and I don't feel like it's a superpower at all. And that could be because I'm recently diagnosed, and I'm still kind of like, I guess, in a mourning period of what my life could have looked like if I'd been diagnosed when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, even 10 years ago. So that could be that I'm having just quite a difficult time with accepting it, even though I'm kind of like outwardly like, yeah, I'm like, oh, internally. I think it kind of halts the conversation of how difficult it can be.
Yeah, because it glamorizes it.
Yeah, and it kind of like, oh yeah, this is like a really positive part of it. I definitely can see there's some positive aspects of my ADHD and like long-term mental illness. Like I think I'm an incredibly empathic person because I've had a hard time and I can relate to people. I'm also quite an enthusiastic person, and I feel that's definitely part of like a characteristic from my ADHD, which is great. And like in work, it's really good when I'm enthusiastic about something, but it's been a really hard journey, like learning about it and learning to live as a person with ADHD, even though I've had it all my life. I don't know. I don't relate to the superpowers at all. Right. It really doesn't feel like a superpower.
I think there's. Sorry. Go
oh
on.
no,
You finish.
No. I just. Yeah, I think I was done. I'm just.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's something about it. Almost implies that life's easier for people with these amazing superpowers, and you can just like glide through life. And it's like, my son's 11 and he's autistic, and it really does scare me about the journey that he's going to go on, like trying to navigate a neurotypical world as someone with neurodiversity. Yeah. It's like there's nothing super about any of that. Like that's just really tough.
It's really difficult.
It's almost suggesting that, oh, it's okay because you've got your superpower. So like nobody needs to think differently or have any empathy or try to figure out how we do make this very neurotypical world a little bit more manageable for people that have disabilities or have neurodiversities. Like, yeah, I don't think anyone's imagining that you're there with a cape, able to fly and fight criminals. Yeah. And you mentioned Rain Man earlier. I think there's a bit of that as well. Like, people assume, particularly with autism, people assume that means that you might find some things difficult, but you've got this one thing that you're amazing at, that you're so much better at than everybody else. And that's not generally the experience of most autistic people. It's not, oh, I struggle a little bit with social communication, but I can count cards in a casino. It's like, it's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah. There's a stereotype, isn't there, around like devs as well, isn't there? Of like, they just hone in and they're sat at home for 12 hours doing the work, and they bash out a product in a day, when we know that isn't the reality of someone who is neurodiverse or who's a dev. Like, that's just stereotyping again.
Yeah, I think there's two stereotypes at play there. There's like the classic kind of like white man in tech one, which is still prevalent to this day when I tell people what my job is. Like, oh, really? You don't look like someone who's in tech. I'm like, oh, well, it's quite diverse now. So not as diverse as other industries, but you know, we're getting there.
Compared to like 1990.
Yeah. But then, the stereotype of like a white man in tech kind of, you know, can't talk to people. Like you said, will just like code for like 12 hours a day. It's kind of making light of autistic traits and other neurodivergent traits, and it's making neurodiverse people the butt of the joke, and that affects so many people, include like not only our white male autistic colleagues who we have, but also people who are autistic but aren't a white man. So like women, for example, or people of color. If that's the only portrayal that we've got of autistic people, then that stops them from being able to kind of like see representation of themselves. It could get in the way of them actually getting a diagnosis or seeking a diagnosis, and masking. I feel like masking in the workplace is such a barrier to people's career progression, because you spend so much time kind of like masking the traits that people are making fun of. Or that you're just like, oh God, something's different about me.
It's that we've talked about a few times, different angles like that, the application of that energy into masking where it can be applied elsewhere. But yeah, no, I mean, like when you talk about that, it is, especially on the superpowers, like the way you described it, especially like people's end journeys, it is hard, and there isn't I've not even thought of the Rain Man analogy, the fact that, you know, it won his brother loads and loads of money because he could do the card stuff. It is like, when you start putting like that, you can see why you could suddenly be going, like, I just don't identify with any of that, therefore you don't engage.
Yeah. And you could like not discover so much about yourself. Like we have a company conference every year, and I did a talk with my colleague Evie about like discovering yourself at work. And honestly, if I hadn't joined the DNN network, I probably wouldn't have an ADHD diagnosis by now, because it was through like speaking to my colleagues who were different people with like neurodiversities or ADHD. I was like, oh, that sounds a bit more like my experience, because all the stuff, no offense to the NHS, but all of the stuff is kind of like the models of ADHD where they did all the testing on people, and all the testing was done on white boys. For me, my ADHD didn't look anything like that. So it's.
And do you find that, like, so for going back to the network itself, obviously it's me talking to you three, are these some of the, like, because I'm not in the network and I haven't been to any network catch-ups, we've caught up a few times, me and Nadia, on things, but like in terms of, like, are these discussions like active discussions where people, once the topic is open, like everyone's like, oh yeah, like finally got an outlet to talk about some of this, because I just haven't been able to find a way to talk about it.
It really is. We've had some incredible kind of calls, and just even like threads in our Slack channel. We had a call on people's presentation of OCD, which is really, really difficult to live with. I mean, I have it, so it's really, really hard. We've had conversations on accessing medication and like NHS like waiting lists and stuff for all manner of like neurodiverse conditions. It's sometimes the conversations are really hard to listen to because people are really struggling, but it's really heartwarming to be in a place where we are allowed to spend our work time talking about that.
We have coffee chats and safe spaces chats for people to come together and talk about their experience, and we know everyone's experience is different. Like with the medication, like some people are fine with getting the medication and some people obviously aren't. We're not experts because we're art trader and we're not doctors and stuff, but we just want to create that space for our people to come together, chat about their experience, and then maybe get a bit of help from each other, even from like a parent's perspective, or getting a diagnosis, whether that's through the NHS or privately. We've worked with Genius Women, we've partnered with them to help us with workplace assessments. So you don't need a diagnosis at Autotrader to get a workplace assessment, which would really help if people are struggling with their work and need a bit of support because they're thinking that they might have ADHD or autism or dyslexia, but they haven't officially been diagnosed. They could get a workplace assessment, which would help themselves do better in the job and thrive basically, and help their manager.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's...
Yeah, because we've talked, haven't we? Sorry, a little bit about being parents and talked about kids and things like that. But I very much thought about it from a parent angle rather than a colleague.
I think that's what the safe spaces and the chats give. But it's kind of twofold. There's a bit of a people sharing their story, and like you said, it's allowing a different kind of representation. Like people in those spaces can go, oh, right, okay, that's interesting because I didn't know that was a thing, and I might want to look into figuring out whether or not that's a thing that I've been trying to navigate, juggle, fight with almost is, oh, actually, it might just be that I need to think about a diagnosis or I need to figure out what's going on. But there's also the representation and the seeing and understanding the different, because like you said, it's like nobody's disability, neurodiversity, accessibility need, everybody's completely individual in that. Like there isn't a, well, that's, we can do this thing to help all people with autism, because there is no one answer that is right for everybody. So there's something about building better understanding and enabling empathy and just small adjustments, tweaks. And I think it's that actually, like, again, I'll use a couple of examples that we've talked about recently of we have hundreds, thousands of meetings, like meetings going on all the time. If everybody in those meeting spaces is just thinking, is there anything that I might need to do slightly differently? Don't have to completely transform it. Don't have to not have the meeting. Don't have to do an entire agenda with detailed notes and pre-reads for every single little meeting that I want to have. But when I'm in that meeting, is there anything that I could just do that makes it more accessible for everybody in that room? Why wouldn't you do that? It's not going to hurt anybody in the room, but it's going to make things better for other people. And the more we can understand what the different things people are dealing and grappling with are, the more we can go, do you know what? There's something like reasonably straightforward and quite simple that all of us could do a bit differently that helps everybody, but particularly helps people that have got a different need.
So where do, I mean, like, I know we got the network, but I just wanted to move on to, because you pointed me towards some external stuff when we were chatting before. So then those like, not guidance, but those little things, is it things like the book club review where you see external papers or research that's done that go, we could do a little bit more on that or a little bit less on that? How does external bodies and research feed into it? Because there's something I think you mentioned, like you'd read the book club review and you're measuring it against where we are at as an employer. So is that the kind of thing that like the network actively gauges is, or is it more that so really I think the question is how do we come to engage with something like the book club review? Was it through someone internally saying there's this thing, or was it something that we saw? Like, how does that play into it?
Yeah, it was part of one of our commitments, and Niki, you suggested it, didn't you? I think a while ago.
I think the network generally are really good at surfacing things that are going on externally, like reviews that are happening or audits or different organisations that might be able to help us. So a lot of that gets surfaced through the network, and we tend to, like the book club review, I think is a great example where we as an organisation want to consider recommendations in something like the book and review and go, are the things that are in there? And I think the book and review is quite a sensible review. Like it's very pragmatic. It's one of those where you read it and you go, it's accessible because I can read it. It's not like it's a big review, but actually it's quite straightforward in that, do you know what? There's just some things that a little bit of what we were just saying. There's some things, fairly straightforward things that organisations should be doing to think about how they can make the workplace more accessible. Like how can they ensure that some of the disparities that we see in autistic people in employment and autistic people being retained in employment, young people who are coming out of education, and the gap between them being able to access employment. And it's not because of a lack of ability to do a job. It might be a lack of ability to access recruitment processes, for example.
Yeah.
So here's some really straightforward, obvious things that as an organisation we should be considering.
Yeah.
So the Bookland Review is an example of that, but it's not the only one. Like we don't use it as like a, here's our document, we must do all these things.
What was interesting, because I read like this sort of exec summary and some of the bits, but you could actually cross out the word autistic and just say like people. So it was one way of saying raise awareness, reduce stigma, and capitalise on productive. And it could be whatever employee, whether it's someone from a poor social mobility background or autistic or which then led me into then when you said that inclusion first approach you were talking about at the beginning, is I could see how that all links in, and how some of the basics of like recruitment processes or support or encouragement, how if you get that right, it could potentially benefit everyone. And so when you think about that, so if you go back into AT land, I don't know why I've got this like image of this map in my head at the moment. So like how we seeing the work that the network's been doing or the input from employees, what is that? If I was coming in externally now, what tangible things would I see? So the things I think someone mentioned is like how we're planning the new building we're going to move to. So what like tangible bits where you go, not that the network's directly influenced it, but actually that inclusion first approach is real. It's not just words.
I think there's loads of things that the network has directly influenced. Like you're quite close to the office environment is probably a great example.
Yeah, we want to have an input in the office environment just so we're there and we're thought about, and we know Kirsten and the team are doing a great job, and they're working with an accessibility business to help with the new office, and we're taking learnings as well from this space into the new space as well. So we've got that. We've taken feedback from the network people, taken feedback from our auto trader colleagues around training and managers having more of an awareness, not being experts, but more of awareness around neurodiversity and disability. And we want more of awareness around our colleagues in that space. And then we've worked on, like, it's been like a couple of years now, but it's finally being rolled out on the inclusion passport. And that's all feedback within the network, which we've collaborated with other departments across Auto Trader to get these things going. I think it's been a real win for the network. I'm super proud of like where we're at and what we're doing for our Auto Trader colleagues and our managers and what we're trying to do as a network.
And I think the external, because we have engaged quite a lot with some external third parties about very, very specific training that we've brought in. Like we said, we're very closely linked to the accessibility working group, and I'd like to think that our P&T teams are thinking about how do we build products that are accessible and not just physically accessible, like accessible for people with neurodiversity as well. Like, but some of that has involved bringing in the expertise that we need to bring in order to support our teams with doing that. There was some training recently about is our procurement process, are we really thinking about working with organisations who have similar approaches? And so that's important to us. We don't know, as a disability and neurodiversity network, we're not experts in procurement and what you might need to do, but there are third parties out there who offer that expertise, so we call on them as needed.
And we're working with Business Disability Forum as well. We've partnered with them for 2 years, which they're the experts in the business, so that they've got a whole like forum of like different knowledge articles, things around recruitment, things around HR, which they could give us their expertise on. And they've got speakers that we want to utilise this year and bring them into Auto Trader to talk about their experiences with businesses working together, what we could do better. And we're already doing a lot, though. I feel like we do have some businesses who come in and want to do training, and when we've had the training, we're thinking, well, we already know these things. So I feel like we're quite future thinking when it comes to neurodiversity and disability.
And have we got like partners within industry, not necessarily like businesses that are educating like around this topic, but other like-minded businesses that we're pairing up with or sharing ideas with? Or is it all coming from either external bodies or internally?
So we did go, me and Andrew did go, who's the other network lead, did go to, there's like a forum in Manchester where you've got people like businesses that come together, like Sainsbury's, Asda, like Boohoo, like different places in up and down the country. We come together and we talk about what their businesses are doing, and we share our knowledge. But also myself and Andrew have met a couple of times with Trust Forward, which is a retailer, where we've gone out and we've shared what we've done as a network and what they've been doing as a network to see how we can help each other. And I know we want to do more more stuff with the retailers, and but we're still figuring that out. We're still in a bit of discovery of that, how we can learn, but how we can bring what we've done and share it outside of Auto Trader. We want to do that as a commitment, I think, for this year. Get mixed up with my years.
What I'd love to see is a tech meetup specifically for disabled or neurodiverse people. I mean, there could be one, and I just haven't seen it, but I think that would be a fantastic way to kind of share knowledge and share experiences as well, because I think it's 1 in 7 people are disabled or neurodiverse, and so our P&T teams are massive, hundreds of people, and I'm sure that's the same in other businesses, and Manchester's got such an amazing tech scene. I think that is something that I'd really like to see. I mean, maybe start at some point, but yeah, I think that's one thing I really want to see.
Watch your space.
Yeah, I was going to say, find Nos on LinkedIn. And awesome, right? Cheers for that. I know taking time out of your busy calendars, but much appreciated. And again, probably I seem to learn loads of these things. It's like learning live. Like what not to say.
Every day is a school day.
Oh, yeah. No, so real big thanks for that. And so you'd be happy if anyone did, whether it be internally reached out on Slack or externally.
Absolutely.
On LinkedIn. So obviously Nadia Roach, Nos Cryer, Niki Kilby, you'll be able to find them. So thanks a lot, and thanks for tuning in. And don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube and hit the notification button so you never miss an episode. Follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and hopefully tune in to another episode soon. Cheers.